Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Mike's MMA Picks here with your Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Oddsbreaker. Welcome to 2021. We've got UFC Fight Island 7, Calvin Kattar taking on Max Holloway, 145 pounds. Going to be one hell of a scrap. Lots of pops on the button to be expected. 11 fights today, kicking off at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. So at 11, we've got 11 fights. 7 of these fights are expected to finish. And let's get things started. Before we get started, though, I recommend folks spend some time familiarizing themselves with the new DraftKings scoring for DFS purposes. Let's dive right into it. First fight of the night. Jacob Kilburn taking on Austin Lingo. Austin Lingo coming in 7-1 record. Last time out, we saw him face Youssef Zalal, and Youssef Zalal basically danced around him, picked him apart, and made the lack of footwork evident on Austin Lingo's part. $9,000 in DraftKings, minus 230 favorite over at BetDSI. Kilburn, 8-3 overall record, 7,200 plus 190 underdog. Kilburn coming in with a little bit of a reach advantage. Younger fighter, though he has been brutalized on a number of occasions. Last time out, fought Billy Quarantillo, and that was a hellacious beatdown, beaten to a bloody pulp. But recency bias could be in effect here. Austin Lingo, heavier hitter, has a little bit more to offer inside of the octagon, and I'll be picking Austin Lingo to win this bout. This bout is not expected to go to a decision at minus 155. I'm going to be taking the Fortis MMA fighter. Next up, we have women's 135-pounders, where we have a Niras-Melo who has missed weight in 2 of her 3 UFC fights, 10-8 overall record. She did look good on the scales yesterday. 7,100 for Melo, plus 160 underdog, 32 years of age at this stage in the game. She's a tough fighter. She will engage in dog fights, and it's hard to put her away. Rosa really was picking her apart, and she's like a little Terminator out there. Look out for the lower half of her body. It is thick, and she has a thick base, tough to take down. Sarah Morris, 6-6 overall record, has been with the company in some capacity since the Rousey Tate Tough show. This is a lady who, when you look at her record and you wonder how she stayed here, 9,100 in DK, minus 200 at the betting window. Hung in there versus Sijara Eubanks. The Jojua fight, we saw what happened there. This bout is tricky. I think that this line is a bit off here, that Niras-Melo is more live with her back against the wall than the line suggests. I believe that she has a legitimate shot at pulling this off. Melo does throw for volume. Sarah Morris is going to try to take this fight to the ground and outgrapple Melo. Melo, though, does have a deceiving ground game. If you look into it, we've had a month to prepare for this card. I'm going to be picking Sarah Morris to win, but I expect a closely fought bout, especially when you look at the fight expected to go to a decision at minus 295. So give me Sarah Morris. Next up, interesting bout, 170 pounds, where we have David Zawada taking on Ramazan-Emeev. Ramazan-Emeev bursts onto the scene in the UFC versus Sam Alvey at 185 pounds. He also has been with the company for some time. Hasn't really panned out as I would have anticipated. The Tony Martin fight, a little surprised that he let that one go, but he's a fighter who really paces himself, doesn't take big risks. The Alberto Mina fight could have put him away there. 9,200 for Emeev, minus 285 betting favorite. Dagestani fighter, doesn't take big risks. You want to watch somebody who takes risks? Look at the other side of this fight. David Zawada. David Zawada, 17-5 record, plus 230 underdog, $7,000 in DraftKings. 30 years of age. He's willing to put himself in situations where you watch the sacrifice throws that he's done in previous fights. He will give up position trying to lock something up, and he also will run out of gas in fights, especially mid-second round. You watch the Li Jiang fight, Li Jinglang fight. That was something that he was in there. He was hanging in there, and then all of a sudden that sidekick, boom, on the ground, fight over. The Danny Roberts fight was another one where even in the last 15, 20 seconds, he's still trying to pull something off here. So I'm not counting David Zawada out here, though. I'll be picking Ramazan-Emeev to win this one. I think that he not only does he come from a better camp and he's the more polished fighter, but he also you look at folks who are risk averse. I think Emeev does have what it takes to get this done. Next up, heavyweights. We have Carlos Felipe taking on Justin Tafa. Carlos Felipe, 9-1 overall record, 8,600 minus 200 in DK. 26 years of age, coming in with the 1-inch reach advantage over the much more technical striker in Justin Tafa. Tafa only 4-1 record in MMA. Though you watch the way he fights and you look at the camp he comes from, and he's looking to make those strikes count. This could be an issue where volume comes into play, though, if Carlos Felipe is able to survive the initial onslaught of Tafa and look out for those dangerous counters. Felipe could run away with this with a clear unanimous decision victory or stop Tafa. Tafa, 7,600 in DK, plus 160 underdog. A year older than Felipe. I'll be picking Felipe to win this bout, and look out for the volume here. One thing I'll also say is you watch these fighters on the scale, and both of these guys are carrying a lot of extra weight. This fight's not expected to go to a decision at minus 160. Let's keep on moving through this. We've got a newcomer in Jocelyn Edwards, 7,800 at the betting window, minus 120 favorite currently. This line has closed and now flipped. 25 years of age. There's a little more to the story than than meets the eye here. When you look at Edwards, she's coming in on short notice. She's a large fighter, and she reminds me of a raw Tyler Santos. You watch her out there; she is a vicious striker. She also has somewhat of a ground game. I know when she fought Tim Means' wife, she was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. She's taking on Yanan Wu. Yanan Wu, 11-3 overall record. Young fighter, still 24 years of age. Haven't seen her in quite some time. 8,400 minus 110 betting. Sorry, she's the underdog right now. This line has closed. Chinese fighter. In this is a very tricky matchup. Initially, I was planning on picking Yanan Wu, and I actually went so far as to pick her on my staff picks. But the more I've watched, especially at weigh-ins yesterday when they squared up, I was concerned how Edwards was going to look coming into this bout, and she seems to check off a number of the boxes here. There's a lot of volatility when it comes to new raw talent. The head and arm throws are unfortunately in play here, and she's willing. This Edwards we're talking about, she is willing to take risks out there, big time risks. So originally I was planning on picking Wu, but for this podcast I'll be picking Edwards. I feel like she's just a little too dangerous, out there. Next up, men's 185 pounders. We head to the middleweight division where we have Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes, heard about this guy for a while. 8,800 in DraftKings, minus 120 at the betting window. This is another line that has closed and looks like it may flip. Hawes throws the kitchen sink at his opponents in the first round and then tends to fall off a cliff. Although he has, you look at his record recently, 5 consecutive wins, 5 first-round finishes. Taking on Nasruddin Imavov. Imavov 9-2 record. Polished striker, still 24 years of age. 7,400 in DraftKings, minus 110 at the betting window. We're in the larger octagon here. Phil Hawes, if he's able to land takedowns and hold Imavov down, that could be an issue in open space. He can't use the cage to get back up. His get-up game better be on point because Hawes knows his deficiencies at this stage in the game, and I don't think he's going to want to get extended here and be at space versus a pretty striker in Imavov. Imavov could potentially, if this gets out of the first round, really pick Hawes apart, and I'll be honest, that's what I expect to happen here. I expect Imavov to face some serious adversity early and could potentially lose this fight in the first round, get taken out by somebody who is a much more physical, stronger fighter. But you watched the weigh-ins yesterday, and Imavov actually looked like he had some size on him. Hawes, though, is going to rehydrate. And when they get inside of the octagon, I expect Hawes to be the bigger guy. So give me Imavov to score the upset here. Next up, we head to the 185-pound division again, where we have Dusko Todorovic, 8,500 in DK, minus 160 betting favorite. He's a striker by trade, willing to engage in firefights. Although he's very slick out there, and he's undefeated at 10-0. So somebody's has to go here against. He's taking on Punahele Soriano. Soriano 7-0 record. We saw him on the Contender Series. He sat out the entire year in 2020. I didn't like what I heard in his interviews, and also you go back to the tape and you watch him. He's built for fighting. 7,700 plus 130 underdog, built for fighting. Throws bombs, throws big hooks, not very technical. He is looking to engage in wars. We've seen him extended in fights where he pulled it out, but really was pushed to the brink of exhaustion. And he's a Hawaiian banger who is willing to take some to give some. And I see that happening here. Todorovic, as I mentioned earlier, he's been in there with Michel Pereira, and we saw him versus Townsend. He does sometimes leave his chin on a silver platter, and you do not want to do that against Soriano. But I got to think that Todorovic he's been more active. He seems to be the more mature fighter. Soriano, if he's able to mix in his wrestling game, I think that could be a potential threat here. But I'll be picking Todorovic to win this bout. I think that just his slick striking is going to be the difference, and that he's able to get in and get out. Now, we've got our third middleweight bout in a row where we have Alessio Di Chirico coming in at 6,800 plus 225 underdog, 31 years of age now. He's rattled off a string of losses, taking on Chirico-Buckley, 12-3 record. This guy, 26 years old, has been really putting in a lot of work. He's got a number of fights under his belt, and he's coming in at 9,400, your most expensive fighter on the card for DK, minus 280 at the betting window. This line has been widening throughout the week. You watch this fight, and you watch Chirico's. His style is to throw 1-2 strikes at a time, and he really paces himself. Dangerous spot versus a fighter like Buckley, who's going to look to engage and be that powerful in and out fighter who also will go to the body. He'll come up top, and we know he has a propensity to land these highlight reel knockouts. The Jordan Wright fight, the Impa Kasanganay fight. Chirico's got to really play it safe here, and I think that's what he's going to try to do. And I'll be honest, this fight isn't expected to go to a decision at minus 165. I see this fight getting extended a ways. I do see Buckley coming away with the win here, but Chirico, if he was able to address his output, then he could be in play here. But I don't think that's happened. I think Buckley's volume and his that he's so erratic, he's going to cause Chirico some problems. So give me Joaquin Buckley to win. Next up, we head to the men's 170 pound division, welterweights, where we have Santiago Ponzinibbio making his return. Last time we saw him fight was 2018, my friends. 34 years of age now, taking on Jingliang Li, 6,900 and DK, plus 245 underdog for Jingliang. 17-6 overall record, fighting out of China top team. We know exactly who Jingliang is. He's tough as nails. He in the Jake Matthews fight, we saw he will scratch and claw, try to stay in fights. He doesn't get TKO'd, doesn't get brutally knocked out. Been on the brink though. One of the calls we made last year when he fought, or in 2019 when he fought Zaleski Dos Santos, really put a beating on Dos Santos, dropped him a number of times, landed takedowns, and this is a dangerous spot for Ponzinibbio. I don't like to see this line continue to widen here with so much time off, and you also take into account the health issues, the chronic health issues that Santiago Ponzinibbio has had. I know he's got a 27-3 record, and he has a high fight IQ, and he is somebody who's willing to scratch and claw and eye poke and do what he has to do to earn a victory. I am not so quick to lay my money on Ponzinibbio in this spot, considering also the way he looked on the scale. Seemed to lose a bunch of muscle mass. Granted, I'll be picking Ponzinibbio to win in this spot, but I don't think it's going to be as simple as people say. The long layoff, and Jingliang is one tough hombre. He's going to try everything he can to you might mix in his wrestling here. Ponzinibbio, we saw against Mike Perry, he really had to go deep in that fight and use his grappling late. So I don't rate Ponzinibbio's grappling extremely high, although he comes from ATT. This is going to be a tough fight in my eyes, and I'll be picking Ponzinibbio, but careful with this one. Next up, 170 pounders, where we have Matt Brown, the immortal, taking on Carlos Condit. Matt Brown, 22-17 overall record, just turned 40 years old, 7,500 in DraftKings, plus 145 underdog. This fight's not expected to go to a decision at minus 140, though this line had hovered. Condit, 43 professional fights. This is going to be 44 professional fights rather, and he's been TKO'd once, and that was by way of Tyron Woodley's leg kick. Blew out his ACL a number of years ago. Coming off of the Court McGee fight where, let's be honest, first round was competitive until he landed a shot at the end of the round that dropped McGee. McGee's nose was busted, and the rest of the way it was smooth sailing for Condit. And surprisingly, Court McGee didn't shoot for any takedowns in that fight. So we have a Carlos Condit who's now 36 years of age. Both of these guys have identical reaches. To me, it's a matter of who is more shop worn and also who's more defensively sound. And in this spot, Carlos Condit is the much more defensively sound fighter here. And also, you watch the way Matt Brown fights. When he came out against Baeza, it was clear as day. This is one situation where the tape didn't lie, where he's starting to stalk Baeza with his chin up, closing distance, and that's a recipe for disaster. Especially, it may have worked earlier in Matt Brown's career, but Carlos Condit could potentially pick Matt Brown apart here. And if this fight gets extended, cardio comes into play. Matt Brown looking in good shape, but Carlos Condit, he looked much better on the scales, and he spent some significant time at the BMF ranch with Cowboy Cerrone. And I'll be picking Carlos Condit here. I think that he still has a lot to prove. Still has some stuff in the basement, so to speak. And Matt Brown, he's been talking about the gym wars that he's been in, and talking about Spencer Fisher and his sad story. And I know Matt Brown is going to bring it. There's a potential for Matt Brown to finish this via TKO. There always is. He comes out, he's a kill or be killed fighter. I'll be picking Carlos Condit there. Next up, we've got the main event of the evening where we have Calvin Kattar, 22-4 record, taking on the former champ, Max Holloway, 21-6. Who remembers Max Holloway doing the discount double check at the end of the second Volkanovski fight? Didn't get the win. And now Volkanovski has lost 3 of his last 4. Holloway has lost 3 of his last 4. His only win being that over Frankie Edgar. 8,900 for Max Holloway and DraftKings, minus 160 at the betting window. Max Holloway, through his entire career, has taken a tremendous amount of punishment, and he still managed to keep on ticking. He is one of my favorite fighters to watch. He will engage you in a firefight, and that is very dangerous against Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar, who starts off slow in many of his fights, 7,300 plus 130 at the betting window. You watch the Jeremy Stephens fight. That was a sweat in the first round. Jeremy Stephens coming out, landing leg kicks, trying to chop Calvin Kattar down. That really isn't Max Holloway's game. Both of these guys want to stand and box each other up and look to. I think Holloway's going to be the one looking to use his movement, because Kattar has a little bit of he's got a 3-inch reach advantage in this spot, and he also looks to throw down, and he is the heavier puncher. You watch the Ricardo Lamas fight. There have been many others. The Shane Burgos fight. There's some bad intentions. That left hook that he threw after he landed the right elbow on Jeremy Stephens, bad intentions, man. When this fight was first announced, I thought, wow, man, this is a great spot for Calvin Kattar. He's got a Max Holloway who's coming in here, and granted, the punishment he took versus Dustin Poirier didn't look great against Frankie Edgar. Kind of what went through the motions. The Ortega fight was beautiful, but now Fight Island seems motivated. Still, he drains himself so much for these weight cuts. And somehow, some way, Kattar's still, he's a bigger guy, looks the part here. I think both of these fighters, I think this fight is going to go deep into the fourth, probably the fifth round, and we're going to see these guys really pour it on late. Whose nose is going to break first, and who's going to wear the damage? That's the question, because you see Holloway's nose has blown up recently, and Kattar's nose is also huge. I think damage is going to be an issue in this fight. There's just going to be too many pops on the button. I've been really torn here, and we've had a month to break this fight down. I'm going to be picking Max Holloway here, but that isn't to say I have an extreme amount of confidence in this, because Kattar is one tough guy fighting out of New England. They've got a great thing going up there. We saw against Zabit and other fights, he's able to really pick it up late. And I want to see how Holloway, he's got so much damage on him, how he's able to respond. But I'll be picking Holloway. I think when push comes to shove, he's going to be the slicker fighter with better cardio. And that is going to be a difference maker. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I want to wish you a tremendous fight morning. Welcome back. Pay attention to where you get your advice, folks. Look into the track record of folks out there. And also want to let everybody know I've got a couple of plays posted at MMA Oddsbreaker Premium. You can follow me on Twitter at MikesMMAPicks. And thank you. Go get what's yours, my friends. Let's do this. Early start today.